This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine. Boys, Dawson, lady, and welcome this morning here. August, we're only a couple of weeks away from September. School has started again. All the kids are back at it. So this is a great opportunity to, as people get busy, to take time out and think about what God's got going for us this week. And our readings from today, first one is going to be from the Hebrew Bible, and that is from Psalm 103, 1 through 8. Dekanogida. 103, 1 through 8. Bless God, O my soul, and all that is within me. Bless God's holy name. Bless Yahweh, O my soul, and do not forget all Yahweh's benefits, who forgives all your iniquity, who heals all your diseases, who redeems your life from the pit, who crowns you with steadfast love and mercy, who satisfies you with good as long as you live, so that your youth is renewed like the eagles. Adonai works vindication and justice for all who are oppressed. Adonai made known Yahweh's ways to Moses, Yahweh's acts to the people of Israel. Yahweh is merciful and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love. Well, we can talk about that. And our reading from the New Testament is Luke 13, 10 through 17. And this is the story where Jesus heals the crippled woman. Now he was teaching in one of the synagogues on the Sabbath. And just then there appeared a woman with a spirit that had crippled her for 18 years. She was bent over and was quite unable to stand up straight. When Jesus saw her, he called her over and said, "Woman, you are set free from your ailment." When he laid his hands on her, immediately she stood up straight and began praising God. But the leader of the synagogue, indignant because Jesus had cured on the Sabbath, kept saying to the crowd, "There are 6 days on which work ought to be done. Come on those days and be cured, and not on the Sabbath day." But Jesus answered him and said, "You hypocrites, does not each one of you on the Sabbath untie his ox or his donkey from the manger and lead it away to give it water? And ought not this woman, a daughter of Abraham, who Satan bound for 18 long years, be set free from this bondage on the Sabbath day?" When he said this, all his opponents were put to shame, and the entire crowd was rejoicing at all the wonderful things that he was doing. Here are the words of the Gospel of Luke. When I think about this, it's right in line with our reading for today. And there's a couple of things I want to look at right away here. One of them being, in Luke, Jesus, he really got into a very strong rebuke of these people who were caught up in rules and regulations, law and order, right and wrong, good or bad, that dualistic thinking. And these guys, they grew up in a culture, the synagogue leaders, they grew up in a culture where following the rules was most important. Following the letter of the law was what they lived by. And their compassion, their tolerance for people doing things differently was pretty much mute, especially for those who are suffering. And, you got to think about that. Because in our own lives, have there been times when you have felt bad, when you were suffering, and somebody, whether it be your boss or a family member or your minister or deacon, said, hey, you got responsibilities, you got obligations, you're just faking it. Get to work, get busy, do what you're supposed to be doing. And I'll bet when they did that, you were feeling guilty, feeling a little bit of shame, maybe feeling a little weak and vulnerable. Because you're caught up, your body is subject to what the world was all about, There's suffering in the world and you're suffering. And you were feeling rejected, not valued, not really welcome. And so that's what this woman was experiencing. And I like the way that Jesus, the way he phrased this, because he said this woman had been suffering from a demon for all these years, 18 years or something like that. I don't know if I said that in there. I gotta look at it. For 18 years she had been bent over, and we don't know exactly how old she was, but because it just says a woman. So we don't know how old she was when she was crippled. But, in the culture of that time, being ill was considered, a bad thing. That, the demons were after you. You got sick, you had creatures, monsters, or whatever coming after you. And Jesus knew his audience. He knew who he was talking to. So he worded it, he phrased it, that this woman, and a caretaker, a caregiver, a nurturer, is suffering. And imagine if you're in that kind of way. You think about it. That's a serious thing. She's bent over, can't see straight. More than likely in pain all the time. And then you come into the synagogue, and the religious leaders have no sympathy and no empathy for you. But here is an opportunity has been put before you to be healed, to get a whole body back, and you receive that gift, and you praise God for it, and then you're attacked for being healed by the people that you have looked up to all your life. The leaders of the synagogue. This gal grew up in a culture where she was trained to put these people in esteem, to value their judgment. And here she has, in her suffering, turned to Jesus for help, got the help she wants, and now she's being attacked by the people who she looked up to for getting help. Imagine if you were in your shoes, how she must have felt. I mean, we don't talk about that. We talk about Jesus rebuking them, because he did. He went after them right away. He used some bad words to go after them, call them a hypocrite. And can you imagine that woman standing there listening to this interaction going on between Jesus and these leaders of the synagogue? The guilt and the shame that she must have felt by turning to Jesus for help, for breaking the law, risking being condemned by God, for asking for help. It's pretty intense when you think about it. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if she was bawling her eyes out, standing there, feeling all sad and guilty and shameful, because it's pretty serious stuff. When people feel shame, that means they internalize the belief that they're bad people. Mm-hmm. And here she was, completely innocent. And Jesus knew. So he didn't hesitate to defend her. and to confront them with the obvious. And the obvious being, what do these people really value? What do they really care about? They don't care about human beings. Religious leaders, they didn't care about it. They cared about being in charge. They cared about being the boss, being in control, having all the resources. That's what they cared about. This is about Jesus challenging their position as leaders in the community, leaders in the church. And they were intimidated and felt threatened by that. So they used the only resource they had at their disposal, and that was the law. So instead of celebrating, say, hey, this is a wonderful thing, we ought to do this more often, they went after Jesus and went after this woman for breaking the law, because they didn't want to give up their control. Are there times that you don't want to give up your control over celebrating somebody else's good fortune? Having a willingness to learn something new? I mean, imagine if you were in the synagogue leader's shoes and you had spouted some rationalization to defend your position, and all of a sudden you got rebuked. You got attacked. How would you react to that rebuke? Would you be willing to listen to it? Would you be willing to look at your side of the street and analyze it and see if maybe there's some truth to it? Or would you get all defensive and all uptight and self-righteous and come back and try to get into a counterattack when somebody said something so obvious as, hey, you want your way, and your way is the wrong way. And this is why. Because you're valuing your possessions, you're valuing your power, you're valuing your position more than you're valuing human beings. How would you react to that? Would you do an honest self-assessment? Or would you just dismiss it offhand and walk away and start mumbling and find somebody that one of your allies, or maybe a few of your buddies or allies, and y'all start dissing on somebody else to minimize and rationalize and justify and be able to say, hey, you were right and they were wrong, but there ain't nothing you can do about it, so you might as well just let it go? Boy, I can't even begin to tell you how many times I've seen that happen. And nothing changed. We know what these guys did. They walked away and they started plotting against Jesus because he was right. And they didn't want to look at their side of the street. They didn't want to own the fact that they were unwilling to put human life as more important than getting their way. How about you? So let me read a little story here about this rebuke. It's kind of along the lines of what I just said. Criticism is always difficult to accept, but if we receive it with humility and a desire to improve our character, it can be helpful. Only a fool does not profit when he is rebuked for his mistakes or her mistakes. Several years ago, I read a helpful article on this subject. It stated that when we are criticized, we ought to ask ourselves whether the criticism contains any truth. If it does, we should learn from it, even when it is not given with the right motivation and in the right spirit. The article then offered these 4 suggestions. 1, commit the matter instantly to God. asking God to remove all resentment or counter-criticism on your part and teach you the needed lessons. 2, remember that we are all great sinners, or we all do wrongs, and that the one who has criticized us does not begin to know the worst about us. 3, if you have made a mistake or committed a wrong, humbly and frankly confess it to God and to anyone you may have injured. And 4, be willing to learn afresh that you are not infallible and that you need God's grace and wisdom every moment of the day to keep on the straight path. When we are criticized, let's accept what is true and act upon it, thereby becoming a stronger person or a better person. Those who profit from rebuke are wise. I like that. I thought it was really cool. It resonated with me. You know, I'll be the first one to admit there are times when people are like trying to rebuke me that I question their motives. That I wonder, you know, whether it's coming from God or coming from their ego. And I'll get defensive on occasion. You know, especially in situations like CPE training, where, you know, you got different people from, or in this case, in the situation I've been in over the last year, where just about everybody sitting in the room is right-wing, conservative, Christian, fundamentalist, or evangelical, or Pentecostal, or whatever. And here I am, a Native American Christian liberation theologian, embracing my own experience of Christ through my own cultural and spiritual context, and that just freaks them out. And so they have tried very hard to assimilate me. And I've had Protestant Christians trying to assimilate me all my life. Time and time again. And so I get kind of like, yeah, right, where's this coming from? And I have to pause and remind myself it's okay to look at what they're saying, to listen and hear what they have to say. There might be some grand truth in there, because I do know from my own experience that God uses people to help people. And sometimes God's messengers are a surprise. Even they don't know they're being used by God most of the time. And so, there you go. So, and messages come in many different ways. So I'm the first one to say, yeah, it's tough. It's not easy. We get all caught up in ourselves, in our routine, in our trying to be safe, trying to be in control. And that's the great challenge, because even Jesus is saying, what's more important than being safe and being in control is what's your motives, where are you coming from? So do you really want to risk being rebuked by God? That's a big one. How many times have you encouraged God to rebuke you by deliberately doing stuff that you know that God's not on board with? You got to think about that. That's pretty humorous. I mean, we're that way. We are fallible, you know, and sometimes we get a little stubborn and willful. Yep. And so you got to think about it. How many times have you set yourself up for God to, hey, come on down and rebuke me? I know I got to come. And you know it's going to happen. So, what's the motivation to change? Do you like being rebuked by God? Are you really happy with that? That's the motivation. You know, if you're not happy with the way things go, and assuming, of course, you don't really believe you deserve to suffer immeasurably, then I encourage you to reassess your position when it comes to living on God's terms and caring, compassion, you know, sharing, being of good service. Granted, you know, most people can't lay hands on somebody else, at least yet, and cure them. Perhaps someday that'll be a little more common. But the fact is, when the opportunity comes, it's great. And I know the psalmist here, the psalmist was all excited that God was going to cure every disease. Well, you don't know exactly what that means. Cures come in different forms. We know we're going to die. We're all going to die. So it's amazing how God is able to use us to help each other. And I'm a living testament of that, which I know for a fact annoys some people that I'm still here. And I think that's a good sign that I am annoying some people, especially religious leaders who are getting rebuked. And so I encourage you to go back and read Psalm 103 from a little different take, a little different perspective. Bless God no matter what's going on. Give God thanks for the opportunity to grow, to be rebuked. Because there's one thing you've got to keep in mind about getting rebuked by God. The only reason that it's happening is because God cares. If God was completely indifferent about us, we would never get rebuked. It all depends on your perspective. God is rebuking you. It means God cares and wants to help you grow into the person that you have the potential to be. So I encourage you to receive the rebukes a little more open-mindedly and to reflect upon them. Are all rebukes going to be from God? No. Are all rebukes going to be necessarily truthful? No. But discernment is really important. So I encourage you to sit with them, pray with them, and do an honest assessment of yourself when you do get rebuked, to look at whether or not you're more concerned about people than you are about getting your way. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Or it can be this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Every